What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlecoff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's do a little overrated, underrated, and then get you out of here. Uh, One thing I flew home on JSX, which is essentially like the commercial private airline, but it's not that expensive. Like if my ticket would have been 250, I get this ticket for like 500, but it only flies out of certain areas. And I saw that they fly Dallas to Phoenix, and you don't have there's you can show up 5 minutes before the flight. You basically walk right on. It's a small airline. The Wi-Fi is Starlink. I see all these people in the media love talking shit about Elon. I mean, they are fucking morons. Starlink is fucking incredible. I watched on the plane the the Sunday morning game, no different than I would have if I was sitting on my couch at home. I was tweeting, I was on scrolling on Instagram, I was reading some articles. The power of that thing was mind blowing. My brother's used it forever as a farmer because he'll be out in podunk nowhere and he's like needs to look something up. He said forever. He's like, it is badass. And JSX not only is we can just wake up an hour before we need to leave, eat a little breakfast, go. It was worth spending a couple hundred extra dollars. Now you can't get the flights everywhere, so it's very pound specific. But that internet is easily. I've never really been on a private jet, but I don't know if private jets have great internet, but I have never, ever been on a commercial airline, ever, that had an internet that would hold a candle to what I just experienced today in that Starlink. So props to them for having the Starlink. So I watched the game this morning and it unraveled. Obviously, the Bears curb stomped them. And I was thinking this. You know what's overrated? Thinking just because you'll get the number one overall pick and there's some sweet quarterback in the draft. See this in the NBA because there's some sweet prospect that guy will save your franchise. Trevor Lawrence, one, it truly is. And listen, he actually showed a little more passion, I thought, this morning, being into the game even late as they're getting their ass kicked. That was I guess nice to see. But he had some throws in that game where you're just like, bro. Now he also had some drops. Gabe Davis hands at point in time looked like me. The LSU rookie dropped a touchdown that went right through his hands. That was pretty embarrassing. So it wasn't all on Trevor Lawrence, but let's face it, when they drafted him, they expected more. I don't know why they would have expected more last off season. Like you did have a body of work, but I definitely thought he was a better player, even based on his first 3 years than what we're seeing now. I thought it was insane to give him $200 million. But when you're the Jags, like let's face it, there's just kind of a stink to your organization. Doug will get blamed. The defensive coordinator that kind of has got like that porn star mustache going clearly is awful. Part of it when you're an owner is when you get really mad. I'm sure Shad, like Woody last week's got a bunch of buddies over in the London area, so he's rubbing elbows with all the Euros, and they're sitting there watching the team getting embarrassed. It's a tough look. But I think one thing that bothers you is you justify in your head someone can fix Trevor. We gave him $200 million. He's a worthy player. Someone can make that right. I think where you get bothered is like we need a new defensive coordinator. Okay, a defensive coordinator, even if they don't have that much leverage, still costs like 2-year deal, $3 million. So like I am paying this human being. I was talking about this to someone at a bar this weekend. Could have been one of like 7 days. I've been drinking a lot, need to go on a big cleanse starting Monday. But how many employees in America? I'm not talking business owners. I'm talking W-2 employees, non-athletes or, musical artists or even like someone in Hollywood shooting in Netflix makes 7 figures as a W-2 employee. That number is so small. And you get football coaches. I mean, I can't tell you, I don't have the information, but I've said this forever. I know that all the offensive and defensive coordinators in the NFL all make 7 figures. All of them. Countless offensive line coaches do. Some defensive line coaches do. Do you understand how much money that is to be an employee? That one, like, yeah, there are some employees that make 7 figures. Most of those guys are in like high level management positions. If I am the offensive line coach, I'm not even the highest guy in the totem pole on my side of the ball. So Shad Khan cuts this check to this defensive coordinator that looks like he could have been in Dirk Diggler in Boogie Nights. I mean, that's just the stash he's got going, and he is getting shredded on a weekly basis. If you're trying, you're like, I'm paying this guy 1.75 million. Like that's the type of stuff that really pisses you off because the way you made your money, like your high paid employees, it's all relative to whatever your industry. You felt like we're giving you a lot, so you always kind of justify the players. It's never their fault, but the coaches, they're the easiest ones to blame. And once you start paying these huge freights, even if you're making a lot of money, you're like, this is heads are going to roll. Underrated. I hate to keep beating a dead horse here, but it is crazy how it's almost underrated. I don't think we're even talking about enough how bland Tom is. And I don't blame him because this is not his thing. He's not, this is entertainment. And he's been an entertainer for 30 years as a player. It wasn't, his press conferences were always really, really boring. That was never his thing. Now that he talks for a living, you got to entertain. You know what's funny is I said something, I made a comment on one of these videos of like Belichick, Lombardi, and Matt Patricia. I said, I wish you would just remove Matt Patricia and just let the other two guys talk. I don't need Matt Patricia, who's bringing nothing to the table. And there were a lot of like, somehow all these comments showed up in my inbox thing on Instagram, and one guy looks like a complete douche, just came off the top rope and was like, "Who are you? This guy's got 25-year experience. You shut up. You only scouted in the league for a couple years. You the fuck can't have an opinion." I'm not saying that Matt Patricia doesn't know football. If you just said talk football between you and Matt Patricia, he would know more than me. He would know more than most people. But now he talks for a living and he's on these shows. It's like, okay, entertain me. And every time he talks, I want to either fast forward or turn it off because he brings nothing to the table. He will not say anything. It's why so many coaches are so bad once they get in the media because they all want to get back into coaching. And I think that's the biggest fraud move. It's like, one, you're just trying to get a little paycheck here, but either say something or just don't do this job because, especially if you're a guy that was a dick to the media and didn't care about this side, like, okay, you're going to enter this realm. Like, your job's now to entertain. Can you entertain me or can you not? And I think Tom is really struggling. Like his entire life when he talked about football, unless he was doing a true like one-on-one interview with, whoever over the years and got really personal and was like really powerful. Whenever he got into a situation where the mic was in front of him and a lot of people were looking at him, which is essentially what's happening now, he was pretty bland. He was not the guy that like Julian and Gronk and Grable talks about. All these guys talk about this incredible personality. He just didn't really have it. That's the thing. Like Vrabel's a good example. Vrabel went from player, big personality, transitioned into coaching, and after a while, you like felt like when Vrabel would talk, you kind of got the player meets the coach personality. Obviously, as a coach, you can't just say whatever you think. You got to be careful about certain things. But it was like I got to feel his personality. I'm watching Tom. I feel he's got caught in between, which is understandable. This is not his. I mean, this is technically his job. He's got no training to do this. And how in defense of him, how would he even know what was entertaining? Because for 20 straight years on Sundays, he was playing. He's not watching all these games, doesn't know what's good or bad. I'm not saying he didn't watch games in some of his free time, but he was more looking like, all right, we play this team in 3 weeks. I wonder what their front is. Were you and me and everyone that's been watching football casually our entire life, because we didn't play in the NFL for 10, 15, 20 years, knows what's good and bad and just wants to be entertained. And I think it's pretty difficult for him. I really do. And I'm not trying to shit on him, but like I just think it's like kind of crazy how he can't, I don't know, he just like be one of the guys. It's been really, really hard for him to kind of figure that. I mean, it's not happening. It's not happening. And today's a good example. When you get these blowout games, that's when the best shine. Like a Gruden, a Madden, like just you kind of got to entertain now. Pull some fucking tricks out of your back pocket and let her rip. And he just not going to have that. Can he get that over the next 5 years? Maybe. And listen, he's going to own the Raiders because I had someone on a mailbag hit me up about what will the Raiders do when Mark Davis dies because he doesn't have any kids. Well, he's doing this job because they're paying him almost $400 million, but he needs that capital to keep investing or have investing so he can make money to ultimately purchase this team, which I'm sure the league. But you need a lot of money to be able to purchase this team as the majority shareholder, which gets to pull the trigger on the decisions. So, like, ultimately, is he just doing this job so he can one day be the owner of the Raiders? Which I think at this point in time, it's fair to assume, yeah, because I bet he really, really wants to own the Raiders. Well, to own the Raiders, let's just say Mark lives another 5, 8, 9 years, is going to be really, really expensive. We're talking not like 2, 3 billion. We're talking like 8, 9. And he needs to accumulate as much money as humanly possible before that to even have a chance to cut that big of a check. Overrated. I was thinking about this morning on the plane. Again, Starlink just blew my mind. It really did. Uh, Roger Goodell, I guess, said this morning that an international Super Bowl is on the table, which a lot of you guys have been hitting me up against or about. And I said, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't bet against it, but who knows? It'd be a logistical nightmare. But clearly they're talking about it. I think these two things go hand in hand. You have a game in Europe or a 6:30 a.m. kickoff every single game, basically of the year. Like 15 Sundays a year, maybe 16. You wouldn't do it that first week. I guess you could, but it would basically be all year round. It would be its own property. Sunday morning games at 6:30 for us on the West Coast. And it hit me today. Do you know what would become immediately overrated and basically unnecessary? Now, I've thought these things were overrated. I don't watch them. Our pregame shows on Sunday morning. Now, I get these networks need programming. ESPN needs to put something on TV, CBS, Fox. I get it from a programming standpoint. But if they're partly what else are you going to be watching Sunday morning, in October or November? There's nothing else on television. If there's a game on, even if it's a bad matchup, you would just have it on your television in the background. So why would you do counter programming? These pregame shows, they are paying these guys millions of dollars. Well, why would you keep doing that? I wonder if the pregame show, if this does come to fruition, it's like, yeah, we're all in on London. We're going to have Super Bowls there every 6, 7 years. And we're going to play its own slate of games, which we will sell to Amazon or Netflix or whatever one day. I wonder if these pregame shows would be done. Why am I paying four guys a combined $3 million, to do this? We could just do reruns. We could just show, who knows, some tape programming. We don't need this. So I think they would be in trouble. Underrated. Downtown stadiums. Before I went to Texas this week, I was in Nashville. And the Titan Stadium, they're actually building a new one right behind it. It's going to be awesome. One, where it's located right now is probably a top 5 location in all the league in terms of how the city meets the stadium. And I've seen it go the other way, right? When the Niners, a lot of people wanted them to build downtown San Francisco like the San Francisco Giants did, and they ended up building in Silicon Valley because the money. And it was a point of contention for a long time. Still kind of is if you don't live in Southern California. There's nothing like a downtown arena when it works right. It is just perfect. And the Raiders are a good example. They just built the stadium on the strip. It just works. It really does. And being in Dallas, you got Jerry's Palace, which I get it why he built it out there, but it's not like it's downtown Dallas, right? So some of these stadiums, Seattle's a good example, right downtown. I know not specifically located or some would call central downtown, but you know what I mean. And I think there's something pretty cool about having your downtown, the cool parts of your downtown, walkable and accessible to the stadium on game day, which obviously benefits as well for concerts. Overrated. Sitting rookies. Just let them play. I I was I was gonna look up. Did Drake May throw 3 touchdowns or one today? Or I mean two. I know I saw him throw two, but I just want to get this number right. Obviously, Jaden Daniels, has had a fantastic rookie season. Caleb Williams really coming into his own, balling. And Bo Nix, who's been definitely up and down, is played every game. Where's the Patriots? Who'd the Patriots? Oh, they got killed by the Texans. How many touchdowns did he throw? He threw three. Threw three touchdowns. I'm pretty sure Jacoby had five after 5 games. And listen, the Patriots stink, and he was running around for his life. But he did make a couple throws like, yeah, if I was a Patriots fan, this is what I want to see. And I think it's pretty clear the Crafts told Gerard Mayo, yeah, we're done with Jacoby. Play the kid. And my first reaction is like, that's probably not the greatest way to do business. Because even Gerard Mayo said last week, I think a couple times, like, this is my decision. This is my decision. I thought long hard. This is my decision. Like, no, it's probably not. But listen, I don't care. This people want to see this player. If you're going to lose, at least show him play. And if over the course he throws some picks, throws some touchdowns, at least he adds a little life to your franchise. Think how much better Caleb, Jaden, Bo Nix, if all these guys become star quarterbacks, they will all say, I mean, Jaden already is. Caleb, obviously, the last 2 weeks has been fantastic. They can look back in 3 years like that rookie year really meant a lot. I got to really build and figure out what I was good and bad at. And I think the best experience or the best way to learn and get better at whatever you do is always experience. A lot of us, and listen, I can be guilty of this. Like you plan, you think, you write notes. Like sometimes you just got to do. Like successful people, eventually they start doing. You just got to do it. I get asked all the time, how do I do a podcast? What do I need to do to grow up? Just start doing things. Then you figure out what you're good at, what you're bad at, what you need to do more of. No matter what the industry is. Unless you start doing something, you can apprentice all day long. Whether it's a construction job site, whether it's architecture, whether it's podcasting, eventually you got to do it for yourself. And yeah, you might fuck up multiple times. Depending on the job, hopefully it's not something too serious. But like eventually, if you're going to be a heart surgeon, like you got to do the heart surgery. You know, like eventually, if you are whatever, you got to do it. And I think the Patriots have to be pretty happy that they just pull the trigger, and this guy's going to get a lot of run, even though their team is really, really bad. Underrated. The Bucks offense, there were a couple kind of fluky picks. I was pretty locked into that game early because Spencer, they were up 17-0. Then somehow they're down 20-17, went back and forth, and then it just became a boat race in like middle of the third quarter, which the Saints, they got issues. They got problems. But the Bucks offense is pretty elite. I mean, they got players for days. These two running backs, Bucky Irving, that guy's pretty damn good. Their offensive line, to me, looks pretty solid. Godwin had 2 touchdowns today. If your best wide receiver, obviously, is Mike Evans, if that's your number 2, you're in pretty good shape. And now that your running backs are good, Otten's a good player. Like, that's just a good offense. Now, are they going to win the Super Bowl? I don't know. But they are not an easy team to play. Obviously, Baker's resurrected his career. It's been impressive to watch. Overrated. It was named this week that Ulbrich told Todd Downing, "You're up, Hackett's down." Rodgers, the offensive coordinator. Like what? Who's calling plays? Like, give me a break. Aaron Rodgers is going to do what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. It'd be one thing. It's like, hey, we had this guy. His name was Mike Shanahan. Or, think of whoever the most famous guy is. Like Andy Reid had retired and was just like a consultant. It's like, we just elevated Andy Reid, 72 years old. Like, okay. You went from Nat Hackett, who obviously is not very good, to Todd Downing. Let's not act like you just brought Gary Kubiak out of the bullpen here. So if you don't think this guy's resume and the equity he has just in the league, that if some play calls happen on Monday night, that Aaron's like, this is fucking stupid. He not calling an audible or calling a different play in the huddle. What does he care? What is Todd Downing going to do to him? So this notion that changing the offensive coordinator makes that big of a change for Aaron Rodgers. Now, the plays might work because he plays well, and maybe there's a little bit better ebb and flow, but I truly believe they're kind of calling the plays that Aaron wants to call. Call me naive. Like he's just letting Hackett do everything. Give me a break. 40 years old. I don't believe it. And underrated. We'll end on this. How big a douche is Sirianni? I mean, seriously. What a screaming at the fans. If you want to do it on the road, listen, competitive sports, people talk shit. I don't, doesn't bother me that much. But at home, hey, homie, these people are your paying customers. These people pay the bills around here. And they're booing you because you are struggling to beat Deshaun Watson, the Cleveland Browns, who are probably going to win 3 or 4 games this year. I mean, just an atrocious football team. That's why they're booing you. And that's why they're screaming shit at you. So, yeah, it's like, well, they were the people that threw a snowball at Santa Claus. Like, yeah, I get it. Fucking some fans are crazy. But in this specific game, when Jonathan Vilma said on the broadcast, I don't know why they're even booing these guys. You don't? Because Jonathan, it looks like they're going to lose or are in a close game. At the time, they were winning by 3, but the Browns were driving. Actually, it was a tie game, and Jalen had just thrown out of bounds. That's when they ended up kicking a field goal to go up 13-10. And Vilma goes, I can't believe they're booing him. Where do you want him to throw him? It's not about a specific play. It's about the overall product. This city cares. And they're watching a team. Like they have a frame of reference now. They know what good football looks like, and they know what bad football looks like. And the Eagles right now in that game, beside a couple plays on offense, the offense is putrid. Sacking Deshaun Watson a lot doesn't get you a lot of credit in 2024. He gets sacked all the time. He constantly runs into sacks. But that effort was more than booable. And Sirianni to go back at it with his own fans. Like, I get it. You're fired up. You're excited. Like, I think that is one of the douchier moves going. Like, if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, like, bro, the people that pay premiums to sit in the lower bowl, this ain't 1987. Google how much it costs to go to some of these games, especially for the big boys. It ain't cheap. Paying a shitload of money. They're allowed to fucking boo. Unless Sirianni comes out and says something like they said something about his daughter. It's like if they're just screaming at you for shitty football, it's one of those, bro, you wear. You go, yeah, fucking be better next time. That was embarrassing. I haven't seen his press conference yet, but if anything else besides the press conference, coming off a bye, that was an embarrassing performance. Thanks, A.J. Brown, for a couple big plays and Devontae for the 1 touchdown. Listen, I don't really take a guy seriously anymore because that move to scream at the fans, I hate, I despise when the media, I think, treats fans often like shit, even though like they literally pay for their jobs. Who do you think is consuming you? I think most coaches, and I think even players now, have somewhat, there's some balance. Like, I get it as a young player, not quite understanding, like, yeah, these guys kind of pay the bills. And they hear crazy shit. Obviously, coaches hear crazy shit. But as a coach, like, you kind of got to take it. If a player wants to chirp back, like, yeah, it's a little different. As a coach, it's one of those you just give the guy a thumbs up and go to the locker room.